Her son called her Edith, his dead mother-in-law's name, while seated at her own dinner table. Irene Mallory didn't correct him. She didn't flinch. By the end of that month, he and his wife would be legally evicted from the house they thought they'd inherited. She'd spent years being agreeable, being useful, being silent. Now she was the architect of their exit, and when they begged for more time, the deed, with her name still on it, answered first. "We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence, it lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe." The laughter hits Irene like a cold breeze from a cracked window, sharp, uninvited, and just loud enough to be intentional. "She's basically our live-in antique," Marla says, and the words ring out like silverware dropped on hardwood. Irene pauses, hands mid-air above the sink, suds clinging to her wrists. From the dining room, voices murmur in agreement. The girls Marla works with, or yoga with, or wine nights with, she can never keep track, laugh along. That shrill, performative kind of laughter. Then a clink of glass. A toast to something. Maybe to ownership. She doesn't turn. She doesn't need to look to know what they're doing. The box she'd left in the hallway this morning, marked fragile, is probably now stuffed in the coat closet, even though she'd labeled it Robert's painting. Instead, they're hanging that enormous portrait of Marla's mother, ornate, tasteless, and judging the room from a frame like a church mirror. "Little higher," someone says, "center it above the mantel." The mantel where Robert's brushstrokes once lived, where his memory still echoes, if anyone had the decency to listen. David's voice follows, easy and complicit. "Looks great, babe. Mom won't mind." Irene swallows the last bit of air in the room and resumes rinsing a mug, one of her older ones, the kind they haven't managed to accidentally break yet. She places it gently on the drying rack. White porcelain, blue vines etched along the rim. Her hands tremble only slightly, more from age than emotion. She's learned to hide both. The laughter fades, replaced by soft pop music and the occasional clink of wall hooks being tapped into plaster. By evening, the house returns to its false calm. Marla and her friends have retreated upstairs, wine glasses in hand. David's in the den, thumbing through his phone. No one mentions the portrait, or the boxes still tucked behind the hallway bench. No one thanks her for dinner either. At 9:12 p.m., the dishes are dry, the counters wiped down, and Irene has gone through her evening routine. Vitamins, hand cream, nightly tea untouched. She moves through the house like a ghost in socks, every creak of the floorboard memorized. The back hallway is cool. The air smells faintly of lavender from the sachets she stitched years ago. She opens the door to the old studio, now called the guest room, as if she were a visitor in her own story, and crosses to the file cabinet in the corner. It's not locked. It never needed to be. She pulls the bottom drawer with a practiced motion and flips through a row of neatly labeled folders. Birth certificates, mortgage statements, Robert's will, David's report cards, his Cub Scouts photos. The final file is heavier, bound in a plastic cover. Deed, Mallory Residence, 1978. She carries it to the desk and lays it flat under the soft glow of the desk lamp. The paper is cream-colored, thick, with her name embossed beside Robert's in faded type. No co-signers, no amendments, no signatures but theirs. She's still the legal owner of 408 Marigold Lane. Every stair creak, every weathered shutter, every nail holding up the walls, they still belong to her. She closes the folder quietly, almost reverently, and returns it to its place. From down the hallway, she hears laughter again, fainter now, but familiar. David's chuckle. The same one from when he was a boy, except now it comes with an edge. The kind you hear when someone knows they've taken too much and still want more. Irene turns off the lamp and sits for a long moment in the dark, hands folded on her lap, her back straight as ever. Tomorrow, she thinks. No confrontation, no screaming match, just forward. She glances at the corner of the room, where Robert's easel once stood before Marla declared it a trip hazard. Nothing remains there now but the faint outline on the carpet, like a scar the house still remembers. The next morning, the sun rises like it always does, soft and slow over Asheville's blue ridges. But the first thing Irene does, before tea, before slippers, is open the cabinet again. This time, she doesn't just look at the deed, she takes it with her. The floor groans under Irene's steps, the same way it did when David used to sneak back in past curfew, socks in his hand, shoes dangling from his fingers, breath held until he reached the kitchen. Back then, she'd wait in the dark, pretending to sip tea, letting him think he'd fooled her. He never did. Now that same stretch of wood from the hallway to the den sounds quieter. Not from age, but from neglect. No one waxes the boards anymore. Marla prefers rug coverage. Something about modern warmth. Irene stops beside the entryway window, where the original stained glass still filters sunlight into amber and sage shapes across the floor. She's cleaned that glass every Saturday since 1980, even when Robert was sick, even after he was gone. It's the last detail Marla hasn't covered or replaced. Not yet. The doorbell rings just as Irene is adjusting the collar on her cardigan. Not from nerves, habit. She checks the street before opening it. The woman standing there is in her early 40s, sharply dressed but not flashy. Warm smile, no clipboard. That's a good sign. Ms. Mallory, I'm Lila Winstead. You spoke to our office on Wednesday. Irene nods, steps aside to let her in. Please, just Irene. Lila enters with the kind of ease only a seasoned professional carries. She doesn't comment on the furniture, doesn't wrinkle her nose at the vintage fixtures. Her eyes scan the archways, the plaster curves, the crown molding that took Robert 3 full weekends to restore by hand. This place, she says, her voice soft but certain, has soul. Irene exhales through her nose. Something in her loosens. They walk the house room by room. Irene watches her, watches how her fingers trail the banister, how her eyes lift toward ceiling corners most people never notice. When they reach the kitchen, Lila pauses. These tiles, she says, crouching. Original? Irene nods. Robert laid them after David was born. Everyone. Lila smiles, then glances toward the far hallway. Mind showing me the guest space? It takes a breath longer for Irene to answer. It used to be my studio. The words land heavier than intended, but Lila just nods. Doesn't pry. They walk together toward the back of the house, past the pantry Marla keeps locked now, for organization, and the breakfast nook that no longer hosts breakfast. Inside, the guest room feels like a half-forgotten museum exhibit. Neatly made bed, floral throw pillow Marla picked, curtains closed just enough to dim the light. Irene steps inside, crosses to the closet, and slides open the door. Behind her old winter coats, stacked neatly on the floor, are several canvases, untouched, spines out. Was this where you painted? Lila asks, her voice almost a whisper. 30 years, Irene replies. Robert built the shelves himself, before it became more convenient to forget that I had a life before being a guest in it. Lila says nothing for a moment, then, if you're ready, I'd like to talk numbers. They sit at the kitchen table, her table, while Marla's lemon-scented diffuser hums in the background like a passive insult. Lila lays out comps, recent sales, expected timelines. The market's on your side, she says. Craftsman homes like this, especially with original detail, you're looking at north of $800,000, possibly closer to $9 million. Irene's eyebrows lift slightly. Even with how it's been altered, it's still visible, Lila says. The bones, the intention. Some homes just know who's meant to see them. Irene looks past her, out the kitchen window, where Robert once dug garden beds for tomatoes David never ate. She watches a pair of birds land on the porch railing, robins, she thinks, or maybe sparrows, hard to tell with the light shifting. I think it's time it belonged to someone who sees it, she says. Lila offers a steady nod. Then we'll move quietly, and move well. They shake hands. Lila packs her folder. As Irene walks her to the door, they pass the living room, Marla's mother still staring from the frame over the mantel like a sentinel in pearls. Will you need staging support? Lila asks gently. Irene glances at the boxed painting still hidden behind the hallway bench. "No," she says, her voice level. "I'll handle the presentation myself." Section 3. Staging the exit. The sun filters through the kitchen window in soft sheets, catching on the dust Marla never sees. Irene notices it all: the fingerprints along the cabinet pulls, the smudged ring around the base of the soap pump, the watermarks on the wood table where no coaster was used. Small things, insignificant to most, but Irene was trained to restore what others carelessly overlook. And this is her masterpiece. She starts with the windows, every pane in the house. She scrubs until the glass gleams like memory, until the rooms feel less like hers, in passing, and more like hers on purpose. She opens the ones Marla always keeps shut, lets in fresh air laced with magnolia and early summer rain. The curtains billow, the house breathes. She moves next to the throws and pillowcases, slipping off anything synthetic, anything beige. In their place, she layers hand-stitched covers and faded cotton, textures people want to reach for, things that whisper home instead of declaring trend. At the corner pharmacy, she buys fresh flowers, white lilies, not the cheap mixed bouquets Marla favors. Each vase is placed with deliberation, one by the fireplace, one in the front hall, and a single bud in the guest room that used to be her sanctuary. She does all this quietly, like a woman tending a garden no one knows she owns. On Wednesday, Lila's photographer arrives just after noon. Irene times it perfectly. David and Marla have left for work, and the house is blessedly still. "You've done more than I expected," the photographer says as he sets up his wide-angle lens. Irene offers a modest smile. She deserves to be seen right. The man takes shots of every room, pausing to adjust lighting, to catch the symmetry in the staircase, the warmth in the kitchen backsplash. When he reaches the living room, he pauses. "I assume you want this included?" he asks, nodding toward the painting now above the mantel. Robert's portrait of her, the one he finished 3 months before his diagnosis, is back in its rightful place. Oil on canvas, subtle smile, late afternoon light behind her shoulder. Irene as he saw her, not as she became. "Yes," she says simply. "It belongs." She doesn't mention that she'd found Marla's mother's portrait stuffed in the coat closet behind unused yoga mats, or that she had wrapped it carefully and slid it under the guest bed. She's not cruel, just clear. By the time David and Marla return, the house is reset, polished, and humming with something they can't quite name. Marla pauses in the entryway, her brow pinching. "Did you redecorate?" "Just a little spring refresh," Irene says, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Felt good to move things around." Marla surveys the room, her mouth opening as if to question the portrait, but then closes it again. A pause, then a smile that doesn't quite touch her eyes. "Well, it's cozy. Nesting again, huh?" Irene offers a soft chuckle, the kind she's mastered, warm on the surface, unreadable underneath. "Something like that." David breezes through behind her, already pulling off his tie. "Smells like lemon polish," he mutters. "Nice." They don't ask where she got the flowers, or why the house looks like it's waiting for something. Later that night, after they've gone upstairs, Irene walks the perimeter of the house. She doesn't touch anything, just observes. The light fixtures Robert rewired by hand, the dent in the baseboard where David crashed his toy truck, the pantry still locked, the thermostat set 2 degrees too low. She ends in the living room, standing beneath her own portrait, staring into the face she remembers. It's not pride she feels, it's alignment, a sense that something, finally, is returning to center. She reaches for the light switch, but stops. From outside, headlights sweep across the window, brief, faint, but deliberate. A car pulling up, not in the driveway, across the street. Then stillness. Irene doesn't flinch. She just turns off the light and lets the room slip into shadow. Section 4. Locked drawers. Open eyes. The next morning, Irene pulls open the second drawer of the sideboard in the hallway and finds an envelope labeled Marla's Inspiration. It's thick with clippings and magazine tears, some printed emails too, each one an ode to soft grays, quartz counters, modern banquettes. Her fingers linger on a post-it attached to one glossy photo. Open concept equals more light, less old lady clutter. Irene stares at the note, not surprised, not even hurt, just calibrated, as if someone's finally shown her the blueprint she already suspected they were drawing behind her back. She sets the envelope on the table and moves to the built-in shelves in the den. Robert's old office. Now Marla's command center. Irene begins checking drawers one by one. Not frantically, just with quiet purpose. The first two are full of chargers, mail, and branded notepads from David's firm. In the third, she finds a stapled packet. Floor plan, extended ensuite with glass shower. The photo mock-up shows what used to be her bedroom walls, replaced by a spa bathroom. Beneath it, a handwritten list: remove all wall art, except Edith's portrait, replace porch railing, ask David Ree, quote from M&T Design. At the bottom, new title post move, Mallory House, in Marla's handwriting, with a little heart over the I. Irene sits back, the paper limp in her hands. She had asked David once, just once, if they were thinking about changes. He'd smiled, told her it was too soon to talk logistics. Too soon for her. Apparently not for them. She moves to the final drawer. Locked. Marla had muttered something about misplacing the key last spring when Irene had asked for printer paper. It's a basic brass lock, nothing fancy. But the key she's thinking of isn't modern. It's tucked in the hem of an old curtain in the back guest closet. Robert had sewn it there after their trip to Charleston, when they brought back the antique cabin. And he warned her, never throw away the key to anything. She retrieves it in less than 5 minutes. The lock clicks with a sound that feels too loud in the still room. Inside, Irene finds a thick folder labeled Spring 2026, Transition Timeline. Her hand still resting on the edge, she opens it. A glossy brochure sits on top. Sunwood Living, retirement with dignity. There's a post-it on the front. Tour rescheduled, ask for private room. Beneath it are printed emails between David and a case manager, full of phrases like memory stabilization program, social re-engagement, and decline in independence, each one more patronizing than the last. The final document is a signed pre-intake form, David's signature, dated 6 weeks ago, not a word to her. Irene's throat tightens, not from sadness, but from clarity, the kind that pinches just before it freezes. The decision was already made, her transition already scheduled, her home already measured for new cabinets and safer hallways, ones she'd never walk through again. She prints copies of every document, neatly stacking them in her own manila folder. No dramatics, no crying, just cataloging, preparing. By afternoon, she's in the attic with a Sharpie and masking tape. She marks the steamer trunk of old photos as keep, Robert's WW2 letters as private, the maple dresser with the bowed top, donate, the brass music box with the chipped ballerina, take. The process doesn't slow her, it sharpens her. As she catalogs, she opens each drawer and box like a surgeon, not sentimental, but exacting. The lace table runner from her mother goes into the take pile. Marla's unused cocktail set, still in its gift box, into donate. David's childhood sketchbook, keep. But not for him. As she works, the sun slips lower, the attic warms, the air thick with cedar and dust and old intentions. By dusk, she's completed the first pass. Not everything is sorted, but enough of it is. Downstairs, she hears the jangle of David's keys hitting the counter. Marla's voice follows. Something about salmon or stir-fry. Irene doesn't go down right away. She walks to the attic window, opens it wide, and breathes in the honeysuckle and wood smoke riding in from the next yard. Her house, her window, her air. Then she glances at the printer on the desk. The final page, still warm. Section 5. Not your name on the mailbox. The envelope is cream-colored, thick, and sealed with Harriet Lee's monogram. Subtle black initials on a waxy emboss. Irene slices it open with the letter opener she once used to help Robert with his gallery correspondence. Inside is the draft of her updated will. Every page reads like a declaration. She slides her glasses further up the bridge of her nose and reads each line twice. slowly. Not because she's unsure, but because this is how you treat sacred things. Irene Mallory, being of sound mind. She smiles at that part. Sound enough to know when someone's angling for your house before your tea gets cold. She underlines the updated clause removing David as executor, draws a star next to the new beneficiary instructions, then signs, presses firmly, and slides it into the prepaid return envelope. The next day, she calls Harriet directly. "I want to finalize the TOD," Irene says. "Transfer on death. For the house." There's a pause on the line. Not hesitation, just quiet respect. "To David?" Harriet asks gently. "Number to someone else," Irene replies. "I'm not sure who yet, but I'll know." Harriet doesn't press. She never does. Just says, "When you're ready." By Friday, the listing is live, quietly. Lila's team places it on a private platform used by relocation services and quiet network buyers. No sign in the yard, no posts online, just polished photos, pristine square footage, and one line in the description that reads, "Owner occupied, showings by appointment only." By Monday, there's interest. A couple from Atlanta, both surgeons, no kids, cash ready, seeking something soulful. Lila emails their offer at 7:03 a.m. Irene reads it while standing at the kitchen window with her tea, watching the early fog roll off the Blue Ridge. Full asking price, no inspections, no contingencies, possession, immediate. She sips, sets the mug down, and picks up the phone. "They can have it," she says, "on one condition." She waits through the silence as Lila clicks through documents. 30 days, Irene says, "from today, not a minute sooner." "They'll want to negotiate," Lila warns gently. "Then they're not the right buyers," Irene replies. "But I think they are." By that afternoon, the counteroffer is accepted. 30 days. 30 days of normal. 30 days of quiet rebellion, masked as habit. 30 days before everything changes. Irene doesn't tell David, or Marla. They would only pretend to be confused, then accuse her of being impulsive, of forgetting something important, of losing grip. They have no idea just how tight her grip really is. That evening, while David watches cable news and Marla scrolls Zillow for bathroom remodel inspiration, Irene sits at the kitchen table with her notebook. She writes one list, then another. First, what stays? Robert's portrait, her sewing machine, the pink depression glass bowl she's used every Easter since 1972. Second, what goes? The bar cart, the tufted ottoman, anything Marla had delivered with, "Just sign for it, it's a gift." Third, what's still hers? The deed, the choice, the clock ticking down in her favor. She pulls open the drawer and finds the folded flyer for Sunwood Living, the one that called her declining. That imagined her in beige cardigans and scheduled bingo. She uses it to scribble her last note, not your name on the mailbox, not your name on the deed, not your decision to make. She tucks it back in the drawer, not out of sentiment, but strategy. Let them find it when they're packing. That night she dreams of something she hasn't seen in decades, herself, barefoot in her old studio, painting without a clock behind her. She wakes before sunrise, alert. The buyers are coming for a walkthrough in 2 weeks. The house is nearly ready. So is she. Section 6. The disrespect is routine. It starts with the thermostat. A soft click in the hallway just after dinner, followed by a chill that creeps into Irene's bones by the time she's brushing her teeth. She adds an extra blanket from the cedar chest and doesn't say a word. The next morning, the thermostat blinks 68. Not frigid, but not comfortable either. Not for someone whose joints know the weather before it hits. Marla shrugs when Irene casually mentions it over breakfast. "David runs hot," she says, sipping a green smoothie Irene's not allowed to use the blender for, "and the electric bill's been a little wild lately." Irene simply nods and washes her cup. The real one. White porcelain with a faded gold rim. One of the few that survived Marla's accidental drops. The next day, that teacup is gone. She checks the dishwasher, the sink, even the cabinets, though she knows her fingers memorized every shelf a decade ago. In its place, a new row of stackable mugs, chunky, slate-colored, matte. The kind sold in bulk at overpriced home stores. They say nothing. They hold nothing. They mean nothing. Irene doesn't ask about the missing cup. She just opens the drawer where she keeps things that still listen: scissors, tape, a wooden spoon Robert carved, and writes, June 14th. Cup vanished, replaced by silence. That Friday, the guests arrive without warning. The doorbell rings at 6:02. Irene's in her robe, halfway through preparing salmon croquettes for herself. David opens the door with a loud, casual, "Come in, come in." And suddenly there are strangers in her entryway, 4 of them holding wine, wearing laughter. "We just thought it'd be fun," David says, shrugging. "No need to make it a thing, Mom." No mention, no heads up, no space. Irene changes clothes in 5 minutes flat. Charcoal cardigan, soft navy slacks, no lipstick. Her protest. She sits on the edge of the couch, silent through the introductions. "This is our sweet live-in elder," Marla says, voice syrupy, too bright. "She's just the coziest." Irene smiles thinly, hands folded in her lap. No one asks her name. During dinner, Marla takes control, plates the food, pours the drinks, carves the roast. Irene, whose recipe it was, is given the corner seat at the table, the chair with the wobbly leg, the one that faces the pantry instead of the guests. "I figured you'd want to be near the kitchen in case you forgot anything," Marla says with a pat to her shoulder, as if that's generosity. Irene says nothing, not because she doesn't have the words, but because they wouldn't hear them anyway. The conversation hums around her, full of buzzwords and renovations and someone's husband's new Tesla. And then, "So Edith always loved centerpieces," David says with a laugh, waving toward the candle display on the table. "Reminds me of her, doesn't it, Mom?" The name hits like cold water to the face. Edith, Marla's mother, not Irene. He catches it too late, freezes just half a second, but doesn't correct himself, just laughs nervously and moves on, talking over the silence. Irene presses her hand into her thigh beneath the table, the pressure anchoring her. She stares at the flame of the candle and wills it to keep burning, to stay upright, even as the wax caves in on itself. She doesn't eat much. She doesn't speak unless spoken to. She just observes. She watches Marla gesture with hands that only ever seem to take. She watches David smile like a man performing someone else's life. And she watches the clock above the mantel tick its steady, indifferent rhythm. When the guests leave, Marla breezes past her on the way upstairs. "Thanks for playing hostess," she says without looking. "You really do set the mood." The door to their bedroom closes. Irene stays seated in the darkened dining room for a long time. The candle's flame has withered to a stub. The plate in front of her is still half full. The house smells like rosemary and delusion. She gets up slowly, walks into the kitchen, and opens the bottom drawer, pulls out her notebook, writes, "Day 6, forgotten name, corner chair, cold air, noted, stored, filed," then underneath, 24 days left. They still don't know they're being moved out, section 7, 30 days grace. The first box Irene packs is for the church thrift store, a pair of throw pillows Marla ordered last spring, textured, gold-accented, and impossible to nap on, goes in first. Then the geometric lamp from the upstairs landing, the one that hums if left on too long. 3 trendy picture frames still filled with the stock family photos, all pristine, all meaningless. She labels the box in clean block letters, DONATE, not out of malice, just inventory. The next day, she books the storage unit, climate-controlled first-floor access, 30 minutes from downtown. The voice on the other end calls her ma'am and uses thank-you-like punctuation. Irene appreciates that. By Thursday, she's hired a moving service for light internal rearranging, which is true, technically. They help her carry the cherrywood armoire to the garage and stack the roll-arm settee by the curb. 2 boxes labeled R. Mallory, Studio are placed gently by the door. She thanks the men, tips generously, and offers bottled water with lemon wedges in it. Southern manners still matter. She doesn't ask Marla before giving away the mid-century bookshelf or the faux cowhide rug. She doesn't need to. Her name is still on the deed. Saturday evening, she makes chicken and dumplings from scratch. David walks in, sets his laptop bag on the counter, and pauses at the smell. "Haven't had that in a while," he says, half smiling. Irene ladles out a bowl and sets it in front of him, careful not to comment. He eats half, doesn't finish, doesn't say thank you. Later, when Marla asks about leftovers, he shrugs. Kinda bland. Irene writes nothing down that night. Some things she's learned don't deserve the ink. Monday morning, Ruthie shows up in a powder blue cardigan, purse swinging at her side, smile soft as ever. "Well, I'll be," she says, stepping into the foyer. "This old girl looks like she's waking up from a nap." "I figured it was time," Irene says, taking her coat. "Wouldn't feel right doing it without you." They start in the laundry room, move to the pantry. Ruthie hums a little as she sorts spices, same as she did for 2 decades. She pauses now and then to hold something, an embroidered cloth, a chipped saucer, a photo strip from a long-closed boardwalk booth, and every time, Irene just nods. Keep, toss, take. "Does he know?" Ruthie asks quietly as they pack the last drawer of the sideboard. "Not yet," Irene says. "But soon." That afternoon, Irene walks to the corner mailbox with a manila envelope under her arm. It's addressed to Mr. and Mrs. David Mallory at her own house. Inside, a formal notice to vacate, postmarked and notarized, a copy of the updated will, and a brief typed letter from Harriet Lee's office. This letter serves as formal confirmation that your residence is not owned by you, nor are you listed as executor or representative. Possession rights expire in 23 days. She slides it into the slot with calm fingers. At home, she adds 2 new boxes to the take pile, one labeled winter coats, the other kitchen heirlooms. She wraps her teacups in linen napkins and lines them with cedar shavings. Marla's mugs remain untouched. That night, David knocks lightly on her door. "You okay, Mom? You've been in and out all week." Irene doesn't look up from her packing. "Just organizing. Things get dusty in corners." He nods, distracted. "Marla's been a little stressed. Says it feels like, I don't know, a shift or something." "Seasons change," Irene says. He lingers as if trying to solve a puzzle that used to be simple. Then he leaves, and Irene locks the door behind him. Section 8. Panic Decor. It starts with curtains. Marla comes home with 3 plastic bags from Rose and Wren, those trendy home boutiques where everything smells like grapefruit and defeat, linen panels in soft greige, tiebacks with gold tassels, eucalyptus garlands strung like apologies. She's on a ladder by dinner time, tearing down Irene's heavy cream drapes and muttering about lightening up the space. Irene watches from the hallway, arms crossed, says nothing. The next morning, Irene replaces them. Quietly, seamlessly. The old brass rod slides back into place like it never left. The familiar drapes settle back into the room's bones, filtering the sunlight into gold instead of glare. Marla walks in, sees it, freezes. "I thought we agreed." "I didn't," Irene says softly, not even turning. By Thursday, Marla has rearranged the living room furniture 3 different times. The mid-century couch now blocks the fireplace. The plant stand sits empty near the front door. She's added a new canvas print, an abstract mess of beige swirls and metallic streaks. Irene moves it to the garage while Marla showers. The next day, the couch is back where it was. The plant stand holds a bowl of lemons. Robert's portrait returns to its rightful place above the mantel. Marla opens her mouth to protest, but nothing lands. It isn't sabotage, it's precise correction. On Saturday, David finally speaks up. He finds Irene in the breakfast nook, sorting through a file folder of utility statements and a yellow notepad of change of address confirmations. "Mom," he says, a little louder than usual, "what are you doing?" She doesn't look up, just flips the page. "Mom." Then she lifts her gaze, calm and pointed. "What I should have done the first time you disrespected me." David blinks. She folds the notepad, sets it beside the stamped envelopes. "I've updated the gas and electric. Mail forwarding starts Monday." His voice tightens. "Why would you do that without talking to us?" "Because I've spent too many years not talking," Irene replies. "Didn't get me very far." He shakes his head. This is extreme. She gives a half smile just shy of warm. Number, this is overdue. He storms off without another word. The next morning, the email arrives from Lila. The buyers would like to move the walkthrough up to this week. Wednesday at 10, if that works. Irene replies, confirmed. I'll have coffee on. That afternoon, she vacuums every room edge to edge, washes the baseboards, polishes the light switches, replaces a bulb in the foyer that's been dim since April. Marla stomps through the house like a woman chasing a shadow. She yanks open drawers, mutters about misplaced things, demands to know where the spice rack went, why the dining chairs are wrong again, and who moved the desk lamp. Irene hums as she folds fresh towels in the guest bath. She's not answering questions anymore. She's setting the stage. Later, she finds Marla standing in the living room, staring up at Robert's portrait like it's mocking her. "You know what this looks like?" Marla says, arms folded. "It looks like you're trying to erase me." Irene steps closer, her voice feather soft. "Funny, that's exactly how it felt when you called me antique." She brushes past her, slow and steady, and walks to the kitchen. That evening, Irene places a small silver tray on the foyer table, 2 clean glasses, a folded linen napkin, a small envelope with the buyers' names written in perfect penmanship. She sets the final cup of tea on the kitchen counter, stirs it twice, and walks away. Section 9. The Afternoon Exchange. The buyers arrive precisely at 10:03. A charcoal gray Audi pulls up the curb, polished to a mirror shine. The woman steps out first, late 40s, tailored blazer, soft curls pulled into a low twist. The man follows, all calm confidence, holding a bouquet of pale dahlias. Irene watches from the window, lips parting slightly. They carry themselves like people who respect silence, who notice molding and baseboards, who don't treat history like clutter. She opens the front door before they knock. "You must be the Mallorys," the woman says warmly, then catches herself. "I'm sorry. That's still you, isn't it?" "Just Irene will do," she says. "Come in." Inside, the couple moves slowly, reverently. They pause in the foyer, letting the quiet settle. "I can feel it," the man says, running a hand along the banister. "It's alive." "Not many houses left like this," the woman adds, "that haven't been sterilized into something soulless." They take in the oak trim, the beveled windows, the creak of the floor like a living breath. In the dining room, the woman lingers near the mantel, her eyes catching on Robert's portrait. "He painted that?" she asks. "He did," Irene replies, 3 months before the diagnosis. The woman turns. "Then it belongs right where it is." They tour slowly. No notes, no phones. Just hands grazing surfaces, eyes catching on details Marla never saw. In the guest room, the woman picks up the single lily in the vase and smiles. This is a home, not a property. In the kitchen, Irene pours them each a glass of water from the silver tray. The napkin is unfolded, the envelope handed over. Inside, copies of the deed, title transfer documents, and the walkthrough inspection form. No surprises, no contingencies. They sign. So does she. The woman reaches into her handbag, pulls out a small dark box, and slides it across the table. A little thank you for the grace in this handover. Inside is a brass keychain. Simple, weighted, engraved. 804 Biltmore, light, quiet, yours. The new unit, downtown, top floor, her name already on the mailbox. For a moment, Irene doesn't speak. Her fingers close around the cool metal. When she stands, the couple rises with her. "You'll take good care of her?" she asks. Not quite a question. "With everything we've got," the man says. They leave without fanfare. No raised voices, no sudden scenes. Just quiet smiles and a single word as the door closes. Behind them, home. At 2:12 p.m., while David and Marla are out running errands, something about curtain rods and drawer pulls, the sold sign goes up in the front yard. White post, red print, bold as a full stop. Irene stands at the bay window, one hand on the glass. She doesn't wave. She doesn't photograph it. She just watches. By 2:45, the only sounds in the house are birdsong and the soft whir of the ceiling fan. Irene takes the keychain upstairs, sets it gently in her jewelry drawer, and returns to the hall closet. From behind the winter coats, she pulls out Robert's last canvas. Not the portrait of her, not the one from the gallery years. This one was never shown, never signed. An abstract, deep reds, streaks of gold, indigo hidden beneath layers of light. The painting he made after the diagnosis, when they both knew what was coming but didn't say it aloud. She carries it to the living room, clears the mantel one last time, and lifts the canvas into place. It fits perfectly. She steps back, breathes in the quiet, and turns the deadbolt. For the first time in years, the house is truly hers again. At 3 p.m., she sits in the front parlor with tea cooling beside her, waiting. Outside, the Mallory's SUV pulls into the driveway. David hops out first, distracted, phone in hand. Marla follows, pausing mid-stride as she spots the sign in the yard. Her steps slow. David finally looks up. The color drains from his face. Irene doesn't rise. She just smooths the front of her blouse, sips her tea, and waits for them to knock on the door they no longer own. Section 10. The confrontation. The knock comes 3 times, quick, sharp, impatient. Irene doesn't rush. She sips once more from her tea, still warm, before walking to the front door and unlocking it with the same steady rhythm she used to wind the mantel clock. She opens it to both of them mid-fury. Marla's face is already blotchy with rage, mascara smudged in the corners of her eyes. David's hands are clenched into fists at his sides, his chest rising too fast. "What the hell is this?" he snaps, gesturing toward the sold sign like it just bloomed out of the lawn. "Tell me this isn't real, Mom. Tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Irene says calmly. "The house is sold. The papers were signed yesterday." "To who?" Marla demands. "Why weren't we told? We live here." "You occupied space," Irene replies. "That's not the same as owning it." David takes a step forward, jaw clenched. "You blindsided us. You made decisions behind our backs. This is betrayal." "Betrayal," Irene echoes. Interesting choice of word. "You gaslit us for weeks," Marla cries, her voice cracking. "All that redecorating, the dinners, the staging, like you were just cleaning." Irene tilts her head. "I was cleaning. Clearing. Reclaiming." David throws his arms up. "You should have told us." "You were already making plans without me," she says, voice still level. "Retirement brochures, signed intake forms. No one told me." Marla's voice pitches high. "We were trying to help. That place had memory care options, community, structure." "Labels for where you wanted to store me," Irene interrupts. "I read every line." David looks stunned, but only for a beat. "We weren't going to send you away." "Not really." "I have the intake forms," Irene replies. "With your signature." "Your date." Marla's face contorts. "You're punishing us because we tried to plan? What kind of mother does this?" Irene steps back, reaches to the entryway table and lifts a single manila folder. She hands it to David. Inside, printed move-out instructions, a copy of the updated deed, her power of attorney revocation, and a short typed notice reminding them of the 30-day possession clause, now down to 18. David flips through it, silent now. The paper makes a dry, accusing sound as he turns each page. Marla grabs it from his hands, scanning until she reaches the final page. Then she looks up with fresh tears. "This isn't fair," she spits. "This isn't how family behaves." Irene meets her gaze, steady as stone. "Fair," she says, each syllable cool and sharp. "Fair would have been being asked before my bedroom became your spa project. Fair would have been David correcting you when you called me antique. Fair would have been heat at night. My teacups not disappearing. A seat at the table that wasn't in the corner." She lets that sit, lets them feel the weight of it. "I gave you my home," she finishes. "You made it a hallway." Marla's shoulders slump. For the first time, she looks less furious and more small. David steps forward, his voice lower now. "We need time. Just a little more. Please, Mom. You have 18 days. Irene says. As per the possession agreement, nothing more. Marla looks like she might crumple. Where are we supposed to go? She whispers. That, Irene says, her voice almost kind, is no longer my problem. There's no scream, no slam of the door, just silence as Irene steps back and closes it. She slides the deadbolt. The house hums with quiet approval. Section 11. Keys and keepsakes. The attic air is warm and dust-sweet, thick with cedar and thyme. Irene kneels before the trunk Robert built in '83, the one with brass corner caps and a hairline crack running through the lid from when David sat on it as a teenager. She opens it slowly, reverently, like a box of breath held too long. Inside, 2 shoeboxes of letters, bundled with ribbon, a folded church bulletin with Robert's name circled in blue ink, and a velvet album filled with wedding photos, faded but intact. No glitz, no spectacle, just sunlight, lace sleeves, and smiles that hadn't yet learned how to bend with grief. She sets these aside, each item wrapped in soft cloth, then placed into a padded chest marked Keep. Everything else she lets go. The brass angel that never sat quite straight on the bookshelf, the cracked snow globe from their Colorado road trip, the mug David gave her that said #1 Nana, despite her never being called that. All of it goes. Downstairs, the house has grown lighter. The guest room is bare now, walls blank, bed stripped, no trace of the eucalyptus garland Marla once insisted gave it a spa feel. In the kitchen, Irene stacks 3 final boxes near the back door. Donate, sell, Ruthie's. The refrigerator hums, near empty. Only a small jar of fig preserves remains. Irene spoons a taste onto a cracker and closes the lid. The silence is not hollow. It's clean. By late afternoon, every drawer has been emptied, every cabinet wiped. In the front hall, she places the last envelope, tied with twine and tucked just beneath the antique mirror. The note inside reads, "Treat her gently. She raised me. I'm no flourish, no signature flourish or postscript, just the truth." She walks the house once more, barefoot, letting each room breathe around her. She stands in the spot where Robert used to hum when he painted, runs her fingers along the laundry room wall where David once drew a crayon castle, pauses at the entryway, remembering the echo of Ruthie's laughter from Christmas mornings. No tears, only breath, deep, clean. In the living room, Robert's final painting still glows above the fireplace. She doesn't take it. Not because she doesn't love it, because it belongs to the walls now, the ones that held them through sickness, silence, and that long, slow thunder called family. At the front door, Irene stops. She slips the heavy brass keyring into her pocket. Not the new one, the original, the one with worn grooves and a ribbon that once tied back her studio curtains. The metal is cool and familiar. She opens the door. The sun outside is low, casting the porch in gold. The moving truck idles at the curb. The driver leans against the side, hat tilted back, watching the neighborhood with the patience of someone used to last glances. She nods to him. No one watches from upstairs. No one speaks from behind a half-open curtain. There is only the creak of the porch swing as she passes, and the faint rustle of wind pushing against time. She descends the steps slowly. The door shuts behind her. No slam, no echo, just finality. She doesn't look back. Section 12. The condo with light. The first thing Irene notices is the quiet. Not the heavy kind that used to press against her chest in the house when Marla turned the music up too loud or when David filled the silence with sighs. This quiet is light, loose. It moves like linen in a breeze. Her new condo sits on the top floor of a brick building with green shutters and iron railings. Just 4 units total, no doorman, no nonsense. The entry hallway smells faintly of lemon oil and someone's vanilla candle burning 2 doors down. Inside, the space is small but open. 2 rooms, 1 bathroom, and light. So much light. Windows in every direction. A view of the city skyline from the kitchen sink. She can see the steeple of First Baptist rising just above the rooftops. Cars hum below like a current she no longer has to swim in. She unpacks the essentials first. Her kettle, her softest robe, a worn paperback of Persuasion, a ceramic bowl she and Ruthie once made at a charity event, lopsided but endearing. The boxes labeled "Keep, Wait Patiently" by the far wall. She doesn't rush them. By the second morning, she's found a rhythm. She drinks her tea by the east window, watching the sun hit the bricks on the building across the street. She reads, she writes, she cooks small, careful meals, seasoned for herself, not for expectation. Ruthie comes by on Thursdays. They sit at the little bistro table Irene placed near the window, peeling apples for pie or shelling peas into an enamel bowl. "This place feels like you," Ruthie says on her first visit. "Not like someone's planned for you?" Irene smiles and nods, hands steady as she slices. They walk together in the evenings, down to the square, past the bookstore, looping through the shaded paths of Pack Park. Sometimes they talk, sometimes they don't. The silence between them isn't a void, it's a hand held open. One Saturday, Irene follows a flyer posted at the corner cafe. Looking for local artists, studio share available, no portfolio required. Just show up. She shows up. The space is tucked above a florist shop, exposed beams, paint-splattered floors, and a long wall of windows that flood everything in gold by 2 p.m. The woman in charge, Carla, wears overalls and no makeup and calls everyone sweetheart. She gestures toward a row of blank canvases. "No wrong way to begin," she says. "Just pick up a brush and lie to us later." Irene takes the far table by the window. She opens the box labeled R. Mallory, Studio. Inside, her old brushes, still soft at the edges, half-used tubes of oil paint, a palette stained like a secret map. She doesn't paint right away. She lays her hands on the canvas, breathes in the light, and begins. By the end of the month, she's agreed to hang 2 pieces in the community gallery, one still life, one abstract. At the show's soft opening, someone lingers in front of the abstract, dark purples bleeding into sunset hues, lines pulled like thread through canvas. The woman turns to Irene and says, "It feels like escape, but not a sad one." Irene just nods. It was. Back at the condo, the walls begin to change. One painting hung beside the bookshelf, another over her bed, the rest leaning patiently against the wall, waiting to be rotated in. Her name, her real name, is on the mailbox downstairs. No CEO, no hyphenated assumption, just Irene Mallory, Unit 4B. One afternoon, she opens every window, lets the breeze carry the smell of lavender and old books and something frying down the block. She steps into the middle of the room, closes her eyes, and listens. Section 13. Return to sender. The envelope is cream, soft-edged, no return address, her name written in blue ink. Irene Mallory, 804 Biltmore Street, Unit 4B, no title. No mom. Just handwriting that once scrawled notes for field trips and forgot birthday cards in glove compartments. She hesitates for a moment before opening it, not from fear, but from recognition. This is what David always does, sends words when presents would cost too much. Inside, 2 pages folded tight, and 1 photo. She slides the photo out first. It's of the girls, Sophie and Claire, posed in front of a school mural. Matching plaid skirts, plastic lunchboxes, both squinting into the sun. A sticky note on the back reads, "They miss you. We all do." Then the letter. "Mom, I know this probably won't fix anything, but I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about how it all went down. I didn't handle it well. Marla didn't either. There was a lot going on. Work stress, the girls' school stuff, the finances. It got messy. We got messy. But that house? That was our plan too. You were supposed to be part of it." Irene pauses. She folds the page once, then unfolds it. Begins again. "You blindsided us, and I don't think I'll ever fully understand why you didn't just talk to us. I keep thinking about that night, you locking the door behind us, the look in your eyes. I've never seen you like that. I know we made mistakes, but families forgive. They try again, and I'm hoping we still can. There's no 'I'm sorry', no acknowledgement of the intake forms, no mention of the name he forgot and never corrected, no real accounting of what he took, not just space, but dignity." Irene breathes slowly, carefully. Her hand moves to her tea mug. Still warm. She reads the letter again, word for word. The second time through, it sounds even more like a plea for absolution with none of the repentance. More like a PR memo than a son's apology. She doesn't cry. The ache is there, yes. A familiar, dull pulse under the ribs. But grief is different now. Not a storm. A tide she's learned to rise above. She looks at the photo again. Sophie has her eyes. Claire has Robert's mouth. Both girls are innocent in ways their father never learned to protect. She sets the picture aside, then folds the letter, once, twice, and tears it straight down the middle. Clean, final. She doesn't rush. She takes the halves to the small silver bin near the door, flips the lid, and drops them in. The sound is soft, like rain hitting dry earth. The photo she places on the shelf by the front door, not as forgiveness, as record. There were children. They smiled. They existed. That's enough. Outside, wind rattles the leaves on the tree near her window. Below, someone's unloading groceries. A dog barks once and stops. The world keeps going. She walks to the sink, rinses out her mug, and places it in the drying rack. Then she pulls her cardigan tighter and grabs her bag. There's a collective meeting tonight at the studio. A potluck, someone said. Bring a dish, bring a painting, bring your latest version of yourself. Irene's bringing all three. At the door, she pauses just long enough to check the mirror. The woman staring back is not the one who let herself disappear inside a house. Of careful corrections. She smooths her hair, tucks the photo behind the plant by the entryway, and steps outside into a wind that doesn't push her backward. Section 14. Restoration. The community center smells like old paperbacks, citrus cleanser, and acrylics. Irene arrives every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. sharp, always with two things: her tote bag full of soft rags and gloves, and a folded apron that still bears a faint oil stain from Robert's last solo exhibit. She signs in at the front desk, nods to the receptionist, and makes her way to room 4. The workshop, as the plaque says. It's quiet inside. Always is. Old canvases wait on folding tables, sun-damaged still lifes, warped portraits, landscapes dulled by decades of neglect. Some are community donations, others pulled from storage closets or forgotten attic corners. All of them are broken in ways that require gentleness, not speed. Irene sets her tools down. She begins with a small one, a painting of 2 cardinals on a branch, their reds faded to rust. Her fingers move like memory. Cotton swab, distilled water, featherlight dabs around the beak, the feathers, the worn edges. It isn't flashy work. It doesn't make headlines, but it's healing. By her 3rd week, the staff starts bringing her more difficult pieces: scratched varnish, cracked linseed layers, torn canvas. Some of these are too far gone, a volunteer once said. Irene just smiled. Nothing is. Not really. At the end of each session, she logs notes in a leather-bound journal she keeps for herself, not for inventory, for truth. Each restoration earns a line, sometimes a paragraph. Cardinals, edges held, color, returning. So am I. Thursday evenings are for advocacy. She volunteers at the Senior Tenants Union downtown, an office no bigger than a 1-bedroom apartment, where folding chairs, coffee urns, and printer paper hold empires together. Irene leads a group now. She's not loud, not militant. But when she speaks about power of attorney revocation or housing rights or the quiet violence of invisibility, people lean in. "You're not stubborn," she told one man last week. "You're allowed to have space, even if your family thinks you're finished using it." Sometimes Ruthie joins and takes notes. Sometimes Irene just passes out handouts with the title in bold, "Boundaries are not bridges. You don't have to cross back." The email comes on a Saturday. It's from a local nonprofit, Women Forward, late bloomers in art and advocacy. They're planning a gallery night in October and want to feature Irene's work. Not just 2 canvases, but 6, including the large abstract she calls Inheritance, which still lives near her reading chair, crimson bleeding into indigo across a horizon that never quite settles. They call it emotionally unflinching. They ask her for a short bio and a list of invitees. She takes her time with the response. She thanks them. She agrees. And she includes one sentence, bold and clear. No family invitations. I've already been claimed too many times. This is the first time I'm choosing. She hits send, then she makes tea. By late afternoon, she walks to the studio. Carla greets her with paint on her elbows and music humming from a corner speaker. "Big news," Carla says, waving a brush. "You're finally getting your wall." Irene raises a brow. "The one in the main gallery," Carla says. "I fought for it." Irene doesn't ask why. She just steps into her space, opens her box of brushes, and begins prepping a blank canvas. Something larger this time, something deliberate. It'll take weeks, maybe months. That's fine. She's got time, and no one's cutting corners anymore. Section 15. The keys stay with me. The studio smells like turpentine and lilies. Carla brought the flowers, yellow and white, in a mason jar too small for their stems, and set them by the window without a word. Outside, the late October sky blushes with the last light of the day, casting Irene's workspace in a soft, forgiving gold. She closes the door behind her, takes a breath, then presses record. The old handheld mic sits on a tripod near her easel. Ruthie lent it to her after the gallery night. "You should tell the story, not just paint it," she'd said. "Women need to hear how quiet doesn't mean weak." The podcast's host had emailed days later, offering a segment. A late life reckoning, they were calling it. Irene agreed, on her terms. No family mentions, no full names, just her voice, unfiltered. Now, alone in the studio, she leans forward, folds her hands, and begins. "You can call me Irene, that's enough." Her voice is steady, low, worn in like a favorite coat. "I lived in a house with wide windows, hardwood floors, and people who thought politeness was the same thing as love." She lets that hang for a moment, then continues. "They called me antique, said it like a compliment, said I was lucky to be included in their future. But that future didn't have room for my name on the mailbox, my things on the shelves, my comfort at the dinner table." Her hand rests lightly on the edge of her canvas, fingers tapping the frame like a metronome. "I was supposed to say thank you, smile, stay out of the way while they measured my bedroom for their ensuite, while they called me Edith, while they scheduled my transition behind my back." Her voice softens. "I didn't raise my voice, I didn't scream, I didn't sabotage." A pause. "I sold the house." The words are simple, but they bloom in the silence. "I sold the house they thought would always be waiting, the one they were already unmaking while pretending I was lucky to live in it." She glances toward the wall, where inheritance now hangs, no longer leaning, no longer shy. "I didn't just sell the house. I sold the illusion that I would always be too grateful to leave, that silence meant compliance." She lets the quiet linger, then adds, "Control is quiet, but so is freedom." The recorder hums as she breathes out. She ends the segment with a simple thank you, no signature flourish, no disclaimer. Then she presses stop. She doesn't listen back. Some truths are already complete. She walks to the back corner of the studio. A small nail sticks out from the wall, hammered into the plaster just above the paint-splattered floor. From her pocket, she pulls the original brass key. Not to the condo, not to her current life, to the house. Her first house, her last house, the one that taught her what belonging was and what it wasn't. She hangs the key on the nail. No ceremony, just presence. Behind her, light streams through the windows. Her brushes sit clean in a jar. The lilies stretch toward the evening. There are no shadows in the room, only color, intention, air that belongs to her. Back at the condo, the mail is light, a gallery postcard, a newsletter, one envelope with handwriting she doesn't recognize. She sets it aside for now. She pours tea, stirs once, and when she sits, it is not to wait. It is to rest. The woman who was erased is gone. The one who remains does not ask to be seen. She paints, she speaks, she chooses. And the keys stay with her,